For today's video, we'll be looking at a brief overview of religion and its role in Great Britain during the English Civil War. Talking religion can sometimes get a bit confusing. It can be confusing for many reasons, but none more so than religion is pretty confusing. Is that confusing? When I talk religion, I always talk the Big Five. The Big Five in my book are Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. These five are not actually the five largest religious groups by number. I think that Sikhism is actually ahead of Judaism in numbers. But when we are looking from a place of impact on Western culture, as well as the global impact of religion, Judaism holds a very prominent spot. The other four are the largest by number and are on a global scale. Each of these big five also have subgroupings within them. Let's look at Islam, for instance. With all that is currently happening on a political level in the Middle East, the Islamic faith has received a lot of attention. We know that within Islam, the two major groups are the Sunni, predominantly found in the west of the Middle East, and the Shia, predominantly found in the east of the Middle East. Though these two groups follow the same major religion, Islam, they are often bitter enemies that fight for power and influence, and in the process go to battle with each other. For instance, in Iraq, under Saddam Hussein, the people who followed the Sunni faith held a vast amount of power and were often appointed to their government positions, partly because they shared the trait of being a Sunni. If you were Shia, you were overlooked, even though Shia represented roughly 70% of the population, 60 to 70% of the population. Today, though, most of our focus will be on Christianity, for no other reason than we're studying Great Britain, which has a strong Christian tradition since not long after the death of Jesus, almost 2,000 years ago. By the way, in case you didn't know, Jesus lived for only 33 years, died at the age of 33 according to Scripture. Pretty accomplished for a young guy. Christianity has its roots in Judaism, but basically, with Jesus' life, along came a new major religion, Christianity. In fact, the word Catholic, with a small c, actually means universal, as in the church that encompasses all Christians. That is, until Luther came along. Christianity began as one church with a distinct religious following, but over time has split. As we've already learned, in the early 1500s, Martin Luther challenged the Catholic Church, represented here by a picture of the Vatican, when he posted his 95 Thesis on the door of a church in Germany. In doing that, he started the Reformation, which was the beginning of Protestantism. So essentially, beginning in the 1500s, Christianity split, so it was then made up of Catholics and Protestants. Both believe in the same major religion, Christianity, but they have some different traditions and some of their core beliefs also diverge. Since that time, the Catholic Church has stayed fairly united, with two groups, the Roman Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox Church, falling under the umbrella of the Catholic faith. For the purpose of this course, we look primarily at Roman Catholics, like the guy on the left, Pope Francis, as the Eastern Orthodox are found primarily in Eastern Europe and Russia, not in Western Europe, including Britain and France. On the other hand, Protestantism has not stayed so tightly knit. The Protestant faith has split many times, leading to different groups within, such as the Church of England, who in most of the world are known as Anglicans, but in the USA are known as Episcopalians, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Pentecostals, Methodists, Calvinists, Baptists, Adventists, Puritans, Quakers, Amish, and Mennonites. Phew! I think you get the idea, as there are many more groups and subgroups that I could list, but will not list. Now let's reflect on some of the key religious groups that were represented in Great Britain during the Civil Wars and what defines them. To look at things in a simplistic way, England officially became a Protestant country in the early 1500s when King Henry VIII, found on the left, split off from the Catholic Church to break up the marriage with his first wife so he could marry another woman. The Catholic Church does not recognize divorce and remarriage, so Henry basically took matters into his own hands. Essentially, England moved to a Protestantism so that one guy could get divorced and remarry this woman. There's more to it than that, but that was the centerpiece of the original shift. The official religion of England became the Church of England, or, as we know it in Canada, the Anglican Church. Though there were times over the following centuries that the Catholic Church again reigned supreme in England, the Church of England is still the official religion of the country, and the monarch is the head of this church. A great example of this shift is Westminster Abbey, which you see before you. It was built as a Catholic church, but is now the centerpiece of the Church of England. Every monarch since William the Conqueror in 1066 has been crowned at Westminster Abbey, both the Catholic ones and the Protestants. Of the Protestant churches, the Church of England, or Anglican Church, is the one that has stayed the closest to the Catholic Church in both service and tradition. In fact, if you walked into a high Anglican service, it would take you a while to figure out that you weren't in a Catholic church. Another very important Protestant group in Great Britain were the Puritans. The Puritans were known for being extremely strict in their beliefs. Essentially, think of the Puritans as your lame cousins, that when you stay over at their houses, all they want to do is read books. No board games, no listening to music, no going out for a movie at a friend's house, just reading books. Probably the Bible at that. They didn't drink, they didn't gamble, they didn't do things on Sundays other than go to church. And the Church of England was pretty hard on them. At times, Puritan services were outlawed by government, and the followers of the faith were fined and put in jail for their beliefs. Because of this persecution, many of them left England. In fact, Puritans were some of the founding colonists on the east coast of the USA. That didn't mean the Puritans were void of power in England, though, as they often made up a large chunk of Parliament. Oliver Cromwell, who you see on the right, also known as Lord Protector Cromwell, was the most famous Puritan of all. His blue laws were based around the strictness of Puritan beliefs. Another key Protestant group were the Presbyterians. This church is actually from the same branch of Protestantism as the Puritans. The Presbyterian Church, though, is predominantly based out of Scotland. In fact, the other name for the Presbyterian Church is actually the Church of Scotland, and much like the Anglican Church in England, it is the official church of Scotland. Like the Puritans, the Presbyterians held a great deal of power in Parliament in the 1600s during the times of James I, James II, Charles I, and Charles II. Unlike the Puritans, however, the Presbyterians didn't totally oppose the king as long as he had limited power. That's why the Puritans had the Presbyterians kicked out of the Rump Parliament. So here we go, a quick review. Christianity is one of the world's great religions. Christianity eventually split into Catholicism and Protestantism. Protestantism has since split into a whole bunch of other sub-churches. These include the Church of England, as seen at Westminster Abbey, the Puritans, and the Presbyterians in Scotland. in the 1600s in England, there was a considerable amount of power held by the church, and the Civil War stemmed from a fight for political control between the monarchy and the parliament. But the fact is that these different Christian churches had a huge influence over the lives of their followers. In Great Britain during the 1600s, all three Protestant churches had a considerable amount of power, as well as a considerable amount of distaste for the predominantly Catholic Stuart family, of which the Kings Jameses and Charleses were part of. So to summarize this summary, the churches had a lot of power, and religious belief was one thing that played a core role in the fight for power. Thanks for listening.